So finding the domain and range. So when we're talking about the domain in particular, we're talking about avoiding excluded values. And there are two things that should be excluded in the world of math, at least in the high school level. Number one is getting a 0 in your denominator. And number two would be having a negative under a radical. So if you're being asked for the domain of an expression, so for instance, y equals 3 plus square root of 2x minus 5. Okay, and the question says find the domain. What is domain? Domain is all your possible x values, and the range is your possible y values. But the way it works is you find the possible x values and you plug those in to find the y values that go along with that. You don't necessarily do this process twice. So now what the rule is here is that we cannot have a negative under the radical. There's no numerator or denominator here to speak of. So the way to find the domain here would be to say, okay, I have this thing under the radical, and that thing can be equal to 0 or it can be greater than 0. And this is an expression of our domain, and we just need to solve it. So 2x greater than or equal to negative 5 divided by 2, x greater than or equal to negative 5 over 2. So now we know this has to be restricted to x values that are greater than or equal to negative 5 over 2. And this is our domain. And I may not necessarily explain it in this moment, but now if I were to find the range, I would start by plugging in negative 5 over 2 as x and values that are greater. So that's negative 2.5. So negative 5 over negative 2.5, negative 2, negative 1, 0, and 1, and start to figure out in what direction does y go as x starts at negative 2.5 and goes greater. So that would take a little while there, but that's how you do it in terms of finding the range. Now, let's say that we had to find the domain of this expression right here. Y equals 5x minus 2 over 7x plus 4. So we're finding the domain and therefore finding the range. But the idea is that you cannot have a 0 in the denominator. So what should we do here? We should go ahead and set the denominator equal to 0. That would happen if this were linear or quadratic or something more complicated. And then go ahead and find out by algebra what values would have caused this to be equal to 0. So just solving algebraic steps right there, we're seeing that x equals negative 4 over 7 once the whole thing was set equal to 0. So in other words, the x value that makes the denominator equal 0 is negative 4 over 7. So the domain would probably look something like x cannot be equal to negative 4 over 7. Or if you want to know the fancier way that a lot of people see in algebra class, the domain starts at negative infinity and goes to negative 4 over 7. And it gets combined with negative 4 over 7 going to infinity. And if you know this method, you know that the round parentheses tell us that they're not actually part of the solution set. So these round parentheses are telling us skip the number negative 4 over 7 and include every other number besides that.